Ladies and gentlemen, welcome this morning to the International Barfly's Bucket List. This is a seminar, if you like. We came up with lots of titles for this, didn't we? Around the World in 80 Bars, What to Drink and Where to Drink It, The Not So Lonely Planet. But for us, it's really sort of, the bucket list. These are the
where
bars.
did I leave my credit card?
Yeah. Where have Simon and Jacob been drinking over the last decade list. So for us, this is a really exciting chance to share some of the bars that have had a big impact on us as bartenders and industry professionals, and the sorts of bars that we think you, in turn, either as cocktail enthusiasts or as industry professionals, should be putting on your list. Like, these are the bars that I need to go and visit to further my education in this industry. So a quick thank you, first of all, to our sponsors. Thank you to Bacardi and to Ford's Gin.
Thank you, Bacardi.
Thank you so much. And we will kick off very quickly. For those of you I don't know, I'm Jacob Briars. I work for Bacardi. I'm the Director of Trade Advocacy, which is sort of a fancy title. I talk and write slides, not very well. You can follow me on Twitter at Vodka Professor and on Instagram at Jacob Briars. And my bucket list bar is sort of ever-changing. But I guess for me at the moment, the bar that has really, for me, has sort of set the standard would be the Artesian in London. Which just continues to push boundaries and sort of raise standards. They're never satisfied. And for me, that's why it should be on your list.
Simon Ford, I'm the co-founder of the 86 company, and I'm going to go straight into my bucket bar. But I went to a country called Colombia, and there was a bar in a place called Cheer, which is about 45 minutes outside, just outside of Bogota. Andres Carne de Res, it's called. And they actually have a place where you can check in your friends that are too drunk. It's like a little hospital. And they put a tag on it.
Where is this bar again?
And so that you can continue. And it's a place that you get lost in time. And I remember once being in there and dancing with someone dressed as a nun.
They weren't dressed as a nun.
Well, they were a nun. And they fly in the meat every day from Argentina. They make great cocktails, and everything that they do is made from recycled materials to the point that they relabel everything. And I put it as my bucket list bar because I don't think anyone's been there, and I think it's actually worth traveling to a country just to see that bar.
Cool. So as you probably know, Simon and I, we love to cram far more information than is humanly possible into a 90-minute presentation. So we've got 80 of our favorite bars from around the world that we're going to try and showcase for you today. So as we go on, we will progressively start to talk more and more quickly.
We should have called it Around the World in 80 Bars.
Around the World in 80 Bars? Nice. We had 3 or 4 working titles. They were all pretty shit, to be fair, but it didn't matter because we sold out. Figuratively and literally.
This list is by no means definitive. I swear that we did, it says there we fought, and we did. There are so many amazing bars that we could have included that we didn't because we just didn't have the time. We actually could have come up with a list of about 400 bars. And I would say that if we did the seminar 2-3 years ago, it would have been a list of 80. So if we get past the 80, there are a few more, but I doubt we will.
So what we did, as you may know, Simon and I run the Tales of the Cocktail Awards, and the way in which that voting is done is that we pull together a massive list of nominations, and each of our judges, 112 judges from around the world, gets to vote for their top 5 in every category. So what we've done in this bucket list, we get a lot of complaints about, by the way. We get a lot of hate mail going, "You stupid idiots, how could you possibly have missed out bar X? It's the greatest bar in the world." And when we explain the methodology, people are like, "Well, that's a stupid methodology because you forgot bar X." So we limited ourselves in each of the categories to our top 5, and that's very, very hard to do. So, so these are sort of, the buckets that we think are important, and our top 5 in those. And as you'll probably tell, if not from the start, we like bars a lot. Simon in particular likes to conduct empirical research. So,
and you guys are in this room because you like bars. We have a mutual agreement, so.
In a lot of our conversations, Simon and I do a lot of training around the world. We often hark back to these great bars of the past that are dead, So we call this the Great Bar Graveyard. Bars like the Hoffman House, Sloppy Joe's in Havana, Don the Beachcomber, Ciro's in London, even more recent ones like the Bayswater Brasserie in Sydney. And these bars aren't with us anymore. And we get a lot of people saying, "Oh, I wish I'd had the opportunity to go to such and such a bar. Wouldn't have been great to live 50 years ago and be able to go to Don the Beachcomber." And for Simon and I think as we were researching this, we realized that we live in those times. right? So the great bars of 50 years from now are all around you. And so you should be, thinking about traveling to this city or this country to go to these bars, because in 50 years' time, the bartenders that follow you will be looking back and going, isn't that amazing? They had the opportunity to go into latitude 29 and have a drink made by Jeff Berry in person. That's how Tales of the Cocktail version 67 will be. And Simon and I will still be presenting.
I was going to say, basically when you're all dead, these bars are going to be legendary.
All right. So, our first really are destination bars, and these are the bars that it's worth getting on a plane and going to visit. One thing to clarify, this is not the list of the best bars. There are a lot of bars that didn't make it that are much better than some of the bars on our 80. These are the ones that define something. They're either a place where something was born, or a place where you can go and see somebody at the peak of their powers, or a place just to be surrounded by the history of the industry in which we're in. And these 5 are certainly that case. So, kicking it off.
Harry's New York bar in Rue de Neu. Quite possibly the only reason to go there is because it's a tourist attraction for the cocktailer of this world. The place where you go for your French 75. They basically pulled the bar apart from the United States and rebuilt it in the USA, and they put probably one of the biggest legends of the bar industry, Harry McAlone, at the helm in 1912, and it's become this absolute gem of our cocktail culture and our cocktail history, and it happens to still be there to this day.
It's a strange bar because it's not actually very good, but it's where the sidecar was born and where the Bloody Mary was born, which are 2 of the kind of 25 top drinks of our industry. And if we'd done this list about 5 years ago, I wouldn't have put this on the list because there was no reason to go. It's not that great. It's almost frankly slightly disappointing. And if you eat the hot dog, it's terribly disappointing. Gentlemen, so sorry for insulting Harry's bar. But now Paris is such an amazing destination with such a robust scene that if you go to Paris, you must make sure that you go to Harry's.
It's a great bar for us to start on too, because of course Harry McAlone wrote the Barfly's guide back in the day, and it was a group of people that actually traveled the world going to the same bars, like-minded people, and that's kind of, you guys are the Barflies of today.
All right, this next one, El Floridita, or Floridita in Havana, Cuba, which is the place, I guess, that codified the great cocktail tradition of the Cantoneros. So drinks, they didn't invent too many drinks, so the mojito, the daiquiri, the Cuba Libre, all these drinks predate the Floridita, but this is where the classic cocktail tradition of the Cantoneros of Cuba was codified, and it's truly an extraordinary bar and still there today.
If ever there was a bar that actually says we're a destination bar, this bar was almost always a bar for tourists. Obviously Hemingway, any bar that Hemingway went to has become a bar for tourists, but it was always a bar for tourists because people would get off the cruise ships and go down there and drink their daiquiris, and that's really what made it famous. And today it's the one bar that sort of still sits there and represents Cuba and Cuban cocktail culture.
So, I guess there's a very long thread between the classic cocktails of the United States, the Prohibition, which led to the kind of the diffusion of cocktail culture around the world, and then its rebirth. And the 21 Club is perhaps the most famous of these. It's kind of like a time capsule that keeps American cocktailing alive. So this was a speakeasy in Prohibition, and a really amazing one. Very, very beautifully put together. They had a lever that anytime there was a raid, all the bottles of booze would get tipped down the drain, and all of a sudden it was an antique store. Really amazing. It's still put together now. Every single American president, bar one, has eaten there. The only one who hasn't is George W. Bush, which just makes me love the 21 Club more. Again, the drinks are a little too oversized and a little too high octane, but you get this really amazing sense. And bartenders from the 21 Club took the traditions pre-Prohibition, kept it alive, passed it on to that generation, who then passed it on to people like Dale de Groff, who've in turn passed it on to you. So there's a golden thread running through from the 19th century all the way to today, and it runs through the 21 Club.
And if anyone's seen the downstairs bar where they actually kept all of these spirits, has anyone been to the 21 Club? Everyone? Yeah.
No Republicans put up their hands.
It was literally, it's quite impressive, but there was literally a long steel rod about a meter long that they would push into a hole to open this door, so it was really difficult for the police to actually discover where all the booze was being held during Prohibition.
The next one, which is amazing, is Raffles. And if you get the chance, again, the long bar at Raffles is just such an extraordinary piece of history. Cocktails spread around the world through the classic British colonial hotels. That's how they came to Asia, Australia, bars like the King David Hotel in the Middle East. They kept it alive. And Raffles, with the famous Singapore Sling, is just such an amazing piece of history. The Singapore Sling isn't very good, unfortunately, because every single person that turns up wants to order a Singapore Sling. So it's sort of like, what's the point in making one properly? But they are trying to raise the standards, which is great to see.
I actually understood why at one point. I went into the long bar and I thought, this is the most amazing place. I felt like Indiana Jones when I was in it. It was, there's birds flying through it, there's peanuts on the floor, this colonial feeling, and then you get the fans going, and you're just like, this is amazing. And you order your Singapore Sling, you're feeling great, and of course it tastes like crap. And you're like, why does this taste like crap? This is the home. I feel like I traveled all this way. 4 buses turned up, outran 200 people. They sit there, Singapore Sling, and then they ran out. And I went, that's why they make them that way. And actually, if you go into the hotel and have a Singapore Sling in one of the other bars, you'll get a quite decent one. And I think they know what they're doing. They're serving crab drinks to the people that are coming off of cruise ships and driving, hence why it's in our destination bars. But it is still really worth it because it's beautiful.
And then the final destination is probably, if 21 Club kept the tradition alive, then this is where it was reborn. So New York City was the theatre, and the Rainbow Room was the stage. And in Dale DeGroff, the cocktail revolution found the right leading man, right? To be able to suddenly take all of these blue drinks and frozen drinks and shitty premixed drinks and get rid of all of that, except for the blue drinks, and to really sort of bring that back to life and bring this tradition back to life. The Rainbow Room now, it's a dance club and a brunch place, so it's less a bar than a destination. But if you're in New York, you should make a reservation. You should go there and have a drink. You should sink in the history and think about what it was like in the 1990s when Dale DeGroff was serving beautiful people who were beautifully dressed, serving beautiful cocktails, and the cocktail revolution spread from there to every single corner of the globe.
In much the same way that you shouldn't write off Harry's because the drinks might not be the best, or that it's not the best Singapore Sling you're going to have at the Raffles. This is obviously the place that Dale DeGroff served that Cosmopolitan, which is, of course, one of the drinks accredited with really giving us a rebirth. And so you're seeing history in its making. He served that drink at the MTV Awards that were being held there, and Bob Dylan was there that night, and Madonna was there that night, and Madonna was pictured with a Cosmopolitan, which is sort of what made that drink take off, and that's why he got a lot of the credit for it.
If you want to know how long Simon and I have been traveling around the bars of the world, we just referenced Bob Dylan, Madonna, and MTV. God, we're old. All right, next, the pilgrimages to the birthplaces. And really, the inspiration for this came from lots of conversations I've had with bartenders around a bar called Harry's Bar in Venice. And every single bartender looks at the recipe for a Bellini and says, this drink looks a bit prosaic, I can make this. And it's really simple. It's just Prosecco and white peach puree. It's one of the simplest drinks in the world to get right. And Harry's have published a cookbook and they put the recipe online. And here's the great mystery. One of the simplest drinks on earth, you cannot get a good Bellini anywhere in the world except for Harry's Bar in Venice. Which shows that, and every single bartender I talk to, oh, Harry's so touristy. I don't really want to go there. It's just full of tourists, right? Or it's really expensive. It's 16 euros a drink. It's like, okay, but your Bellini sucks. So maybe you should invest this time in your career and travel to Venice. And it's a truly majestic, glorious drink. And I actually made that trip. Here's a much, much younger version of myself being taught how to make a Bellini in Harry's Bar.
Jacob before Tales of the Cocktails last week.
Yeah. It was, embarrassingly, that's 2005. So it's 10 years ago. So, all right.
One of the things that I always say makes a good bar great is do something special. Harry's does the Bellini and it does it well, and that's why you travel there. There's a reason to go to it. The King Cole Bar in New York, of course, the reason to go there is
Bloody Mary.
Yeah. So Fernand Petois obviously left Harry's Bar and took what was somewhat of a recipe with him to the King Cole Bar in New York, and it really metamorphosed into the Bloody Mary that we know today, and it really is the birthplace and the home.
And it's also where, I guess, vodka entered the United States and spread across and became such a popular spirit. So it has, it's played such an influential role in cocktail history.
And I should just go back with the picture. this Dale DeGroff used to do this on his cocktail tours, his cocktail safaris, and it looks like Old King Cole is actually broken wind. And next time, or if you ever go to this bar, you have to look at the facial expressions and tell your friends who are your guests when you're drinking it that he's broken wind, because you have the guy just to his right looking away. Ooh, that was a good one. And then you have the next guy going, oh, King Cole again. And every single person's face is representative of someone that's in the vicinity of King Cole's odors.
All right, the next is a unique one. If you've ever got this is every bartender's guilty pleasure, which is of course the pina colada, which was invented at the Caribe Hilton, which is where sort of this idea of the tropical resort bar was born. So truly majestic drink, invented in 1951, and it's spread from there to every beach and every tropical club around the world. And interestingly enough, it was the bartenders from the Middle East, from those classic colonial raffle-style hotels, who came to the Caribe and sort of established proper cocktail foundations, which is what separates the Caribe Hilton from thousands of other beach bars around the world.
And then you had blended drinks all over New Orleans.
And then finally, this bar could be in every category. In fact, we could easily do a 90-minute talk just on this bar. Probably the most famous bar on the planet, probably the most influential bar on the planet, and over 125 years, their standards have never slipped. This is the American bar at the Savoy Hotel. I once went there. They'll serve you in any form. They're just so their hospitality never slips. I turned up in shorts and flip-flops with a backpack about 11 years ago to get served by Peter Dorelli, and you get the same experience in whatever way you walk in, whatever you order. Truly magical. Their standards have never dropped for 125 years.
I say the same thing. I don't think there's one bar that I would consider more important than the Savoy in modern cocktail culture. Cesar Ritz opened this hotel, and it set the standards for hotels around the world. It's the Harrods of hotels. They say you can get anything you want, and he did it with Escoffier, who might be one of the masters of cuisine. And then it didn't stop there. Then they opened the American bar, which opened way before Prohibition. There's a misconception, but it actually opened, and of course Ada Coleman invented the hanky-panky there. They brought martini culture to England. The White Lady found their home there, and the Savoy Cocktail Book is probably, for me, the most important cocktail book there is as well. And still to this day, the standards are at a level that you could not, comprehend. It's still amazing for over 100 years.
So talking about classic martini culture, now 5 great bars for a martini. And the first, this is a drink that's very dear to both of our hearts, but probably especially Simon's. The first spot is Dry Martini, which has been making drinks since 1979, in a time when most bars in the world, martini culture was dead. They have a counter on the wall which tells you how many martinis they've served. Thus far, over 1.2 million. So by not only, then they have a station that only serves martinis within the bar. There's 3 stations, 2 of them make normal drinks, 1 makes the dry martini. And by going in there and ordering a martini, you go up on the clock, right, just for a few split seconds. But you're becoming part of cocktail history, and it's a really beautiful experience.
So I had 1 million of those martinis. No, people literally, when the millionth martini happened, and I think that the reason you might go to bar, when everyone's like, they're going to be serving their millionth martini, there was people trying to be that millionth customer. So it's a pretty impressive little gimmick, but at least the drinks are very good.
The next one, Duke's, this is a favourite of yours.
Yeah, the Duke's Hotel, actually, it was funny, when we did our talk yesterday, we said the Duke's Hotel, and Jacob said, I don't really like the martini at the Duke's Hotel, and my response was, but I always love the second. They serve the naked martini there, famously. They don't dilute it, so of course, when you have one of their martinis, it's straight to your head. You get fucked up very quickly. 2 of them and your night's over. I always say never begin your night at the Duke's, but it feels like the perfect place. But they bring the trolley around, and it's a real true destination for the martini. They bring the trolley around, and they make it in front of you, and they always had this little sort of ritual where they put the vermouth in front of you, they slice the lemon, and they twist it, and they give a little wiggle of the hip, which they're very proud of, obviously Italian bartenders. But it's obviously being considered the home of the Vesper Martini, because Ian Fleming used to go there. And if the Bond fans of you know that he had a giant slither of lemon in his martini, and that's really where it came from. It came from his time in the Duke's Hotel.
So over the last 60 years, the martini's become such a popular drink, largely thanks to the Bond books and the Bond films. And so really, Duke's is where this all began. The next one is fantastic for me, which is the Gin Palace, which has been running since 1998 in Australia. It's the first bar where I tried so many of these amazing variations. They're a bar that's so specific. They have a gin and a vermouth and a bitters ratio for every single gin, for every single guest. So if you order, say, a Bombay Sapphire and Cinzano Bianco, they know exactly the ratio. Or if you ask for one with Ford's Gin, they're going to have a vermouth and bitters and measurement ratio, which is exactly specific to that gin or vodka. And they really, they revere the martini in a way that very few bartenders do. It's amazing.
And as a sort of gin geek, there's plenty of tequila bars and rum bars. There's just not enough gin bars, and they were one of the first.
The next is Muscle and Frank's. Hollywood kind of kept glamorized cocktail culture for the rest of the world. And this is a classic old American steakhouse. You walk in, it sort of smells like 1915 in there. And, it's old men eating old steaks being served with martinis by old bartenders. And it's just this amazing piece of history. But, Hollywood Boulevard, which sounds so exotic until you go, and then you realize it's basically like America. You've let yourself go. And, when you look out, and so you come into this kind of den of style and panache, and, it's just, you step back in time, and Muscle and Frank's is such an amazing experience.
It's funny, it's an anomaly for me, Musso and Frank's, because you just can't quite pinpoint why it's such an amazing bar. It just is, and I think that those years of history just add something to it, and when you're there and you sip that martini, you just feel like a great, you feel like a man when you have a martini in that place, in the Clark Gable sense of the, word man.
Finally, the Connaught, which is just sort of took the Duke's idea and elevated it into something else entirely. Probably, I would say, the single best martini experience on the planet right now. They have their own trolley. You're in the hands of Agave Peroni and his extraordinary team. They have a trolley with a whole lot of their own bitters, special vermouth suggestions, and they'll come out and they'll make a martini tableside for you, and it's just a really beautiful, perfect experience done in a really, really elegant room. And if you make it to London, it's one of the single best experiences.
Okay, for the love of agave, we could not talk about the tequila bars.
Cool. So number one, first of all, the first one would be Pastry War, which has sort of taken the idea of a lot of, this is kind of a third wave tequila bar. So we got to places like Tommy's, which we'll talk about in a second, which established agave, and then Maya Well, which sort of introduced us to mezcal, and now Pastry War is like a kind of grower-producer relationships, bringing in really extraordinary products from south of the border. Well worth a visit.
The love that Bobby Hugel has for mezcal and agave and tequila it's almost a little bit sick, but it's definitely sort of, obviously you guys love it too, but that's the reason, it's infectious. You go there and you might walk in and say, hey, tequila, you're going to walk out going, I'm never drinking anything else.
There's nothing more passionate than a white man telling Mexicans how to make their agave spirits. All right. The next one is sort of agave flavored, but it's just a great bar in its own right, which is Candelaria in Paris, which just really brings that cantina atmosphere to Paris. And Parisian bars were very stylish, very staid until Candelaria came along. They just brought this kind of dirty, I mean that in the best possible way, kind of ethos to it, and just a real love of mezcal and agave, which really brings it to life.
Yeah, there's really nowhere like it in Paris. It's a game changer, and that's why you should go. You go through a taco shop. Getting Mexican food in Paris would have been tough, and then you go through the taco shop, and now you get these great tequila cocktails, and it's really, nothing else like it.
The next is La Capilla, which is basically famous for, it's in the town of Tequila, which always helps, but it's really just a kind of almost a dive bar or a traditional bar, but it's famous for one bartender who's now 89, and he makes his drinks with a knife. Every Australian's like, that's not a knife. Famous for two drinks, the Paloma, which is like the most popular way to drink tequila, and then the Batanga, which is tequila, lime, Coca-Cola, and salt. Wow, such an amazing experience to be served by this gentleman.
Yeah, it's a pilgrimage. Cafe Pacifico in London. I have to say that even before cocktail culture took off in London, this bar was open, teaching people the virtues of great tequila when all you thought of tequila to be was a mixto, and Cueva Gold was the more expensive good one. When that was happening, this bar actually had a giant collection, was serving 100% agave tequilas, and still sits there today. Thomas Estes wrote the Tequila Ambassador. He's the guy that makes Ocho with at La Artenia. he's one of the true masters of tequila.
And then the other, of course, sort of the Pacifico of the West, is Tommy's Mexican restaurant in San Francisco. Probably, if I had to say, if there is one bar to go and see in the United States which can't be replicated anywhere else, it's Tommy's. The tequila selection is incredible. The food is fantastic. It's in the most unlikely place. It's just a very traditional Mexican restaurant. But what you're really going for is the unbelievable hospitality of a single man and his bar team. It's really the most extraordinary experience to go to Tommy's and be looked after, and to see your name written up on a wall. It's a really, really powerful thing.
They're celebrating 50 years, 50-year anniversary, and they've been collecting tequila since then. You couldn't open this bar today because you wouldn't have the collection of tequila. They can bring out tequilas that you thought came from a distillery that you knew, but when it was made by this, when it was made by this guy, and when it was made by this guy. Tequilas with a single name with different nom numbers, and he keeps the collection. It's quite, and actually, the other reason because the Tommy's Margarita was invented there, but they also have the jalapeno infused. And if you can drink 4 shots and not throw up within 15 minutes, you get your name on the bottle. And if you Google that, you'll see some attempts.
I once tried to Julio when I first met him. He said, "This would be great for you to do. I know you like spicy food." So I attempted to do this, and sort of you can go on YouTube. You can see videos of people attempting to do this, and they're walking round. You can't leave the bar, but they're sort of walking round and round and round as if they've got just swallowed a razor blade.
Two techniques. One guy actually takes 4 shots in a row. And then he's waiting it out, and they're watching the timer for the 15 minutes, and it's like they start counting him down. They go 10, 9, and he runs out into the street, dives into a bush and vomits. Right, so he nearly made it by about 7 seconds. He didn't make it.
I did this, and I walked round and round and round the block trying to walk it off. I left the bar, so I'd already lost, and then Julio had to come out and find me, and I was vomiting in front of a pickup truck as all these teenagers were walking past. They were on their way to a high school prom, and they were like, "Disgusting!" And fortunately, I did have the presence of mind to yell, "This'll be you later."
Okay, where to meet the masters. The places where you go where there is someone special or something special.
Cool. So these are the places, where somebody is either keeping alive a particular technique or a particular history, or is, the single place to go and learn about something. Every bartender's favorite cocktail these days is the Negroni. The single place where you can go and learn everything there is to know about the Negroni in a single drink. Cafe Revoir in Florence, where Luca Pichi holds court. He wrote the book on the Negroni, quite literally, and launched it here this week at Tails. And he knows everything there is to know about this drink. It's such an experience.
In Barcelona, there's a bar called La Boedas, and if you've ever seen the technique of rolling, which is not really, you don't see it in bars much. Obviously, people have seen the picture of Jerry Thomas doing his blue blazer. Well, if you go to Boedas in Barcelona, you'll see them making all of their martinis that way. And it's an interesting way to drink it because it's a cross between maybe shaken and stirred in the style, and it aerates the gin as it goes through the air. And it's not quite as silky as a stirred one, but it's certainly got more to it than a shaken one.
Cool. It's a tradition which came from Spain, from country Spain, rural Spain, to Cuba, where it was absorbed by the Canzoneros and then came back to Europe through Boadas. And this single bar kind of kept this tradition alive, and you'll now see many top bartenders using it.
Yeah, there's a lineage there going back to actually Floridita that we were talking about earlier.
Cool. And likewise for probably perhaps America's greatest drink, which is the mint julep, which is a drink which is sort of so disrespected and bastardized, and it's been turned into this awful drink that you drink it. I hate horse racing anyway, but it's a way they make a shit sport and serve a shit drink at it. It's like and try and ruin summer. But the single person that has kept the tradition of the mint julep alive is Chris McMillan. You can find him at Kingfish in New Orleans, so try to go and see him this week. If he ever takes the time to recite this kind of vaguely pornographic poem about how the mint julep is made, it's a very evocative experience.
My first experience of a mint julep was actually at Churchill Downs. I just have to share this because I was naive. I went in early. I think I might have been the first person in. And I went up to the bar and I'm like, "I'll have my mint julep in a commemorative cup, please." And the guy said, we don't have any mint. And I'm like, I guess I'll have a
I'll
Julie then.
I'll get an old-fashioned with shitty ice.
And to this day, of all of the bartending fuck-ups I've ever heard of, I'm like, not having mint at Churchill Downs on the day of the Kentucky Derby is
At
it.
the start of and you get to like at 5 p.m. All right, sorry, we've run out of mint. But what time are you there? 8:30. All right, and then Japanese bartending has become a real fascination for a lot of people, and it's almost got turned into a sort of a quasi-bartending religion for a little while. And the person that has sort of kept it, normalized it, showcased those techniques, done the most to popularize Japanese bartending globally is Ueno-san at High Five. 3 very good reasons to go. One, you're in Tokyo, and you should. It's a great pleasure because it's almost impossible to find. So when you find it, you get this great thrill. And then you sit, and there is a celebrity bartender working 12 hours a day behind his own bar. It's a very unusual thing, and it's just a really extraordinary experience.
So, talking about Meet the Masters, there is one alive and well. He is a real bartender. His name's Jeffrey Morgenthaler. He rarely comes to Tales of the Cocktail because he's a real bartender who's working his bar. He's like, I've got a shift to do. He won't even cancel his shift. But it's the home of so many things that you sort of take for granted. But in this bar, he was barrel aging cocktails, and that's what he's famous for. And he put all of that together. I mean, obviously he writes his blog, he now writes for Playboy, he's one of the best bartenders in the world. But barrel-aged cocktails, really, its home, if you were to give it one, is this bar.
So if you've ever barrel-aged a drink or bottled a cocktail, then chances are you owe an homage to Jeffrey Morgenthaler, so well worth the visit. Next is best bars for an aperitif. We're seeing a lot of discussion about, as Simon and I get older, we start to look for low-octane versions of cocktails we used to love. But no, aperitifs are having a real resurgence, and so a couple of bars that are really driving this. The first you have in front of you here, the sbagliato, which means mistake. And this is another great example of why, in order to know, you need to go. So this is Bar Basso. It opened in the 1930s in Milan. And in 1971, a bartender was working a very, very busy shift. Many of you probably know this story. Trying to make a Negroni, and instead of picking up the bottle of gin, he picked up a bottle of Prosecco and poured that over ice and said, "Del sbagliato," meaning mistake. And the guests loved it so much that actually became more popular than the traditional martini. Now, every single bartender on earth that you ever tell that story to, and I tell it often, says, "That's impossible. How can you confuse a bottle of gin for a bottle of Prosecco?" Well, this is the speed rail at Bar Basso. So they have everything in a chiller, so you can understand now, of course, how we think of a speed rail. It'd be impossible to pick up Prosecco instead of gin. But in this layout, you can see just how easy it was and how, by accident, one of the world's great drinks was made. So this is very simple. We've got Campari, Martini Rosso, some Martini Prosecco, probably a drink that Simon and I sorely needed today, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you. Salute. You enjoy the sbagliato? Is that new to anyone? No? Wow, what a crowd. All right. All right, L'Antiquaire in Lyon, which is sort of takes the same tradition, but the aperitivo tradition, and keeps it alive in the French way. So this is an amazing bar for pastis, amazing bar for vermouth, and just, really, really high standard. And again, shows that, a great cocktail bar can pop up in a most unlikely city. Lyon's famous for heavy gastronomy, the strong wines of the Rhone. You don't really think of it as a cocktail capital, and what a bar this is. The next is Bar Americano in Melbourne, which is about as big as Simon's budget. It's a tiny little, probably from Simon to me, and it serves coffee and aperitivos. That's all it does. And it's just really made, the idea of leaving work and going and getting a quick shot of espresso and a Negroni or an Americano very, very popular in Melbourne, and from there across Australia and from there around the world.
The Clover Club was my neighborhood bar for many, many years. Julie Reiner, obviously one of the first ladies of cocktails, absolute game changer. Obviously, not the home of the Clover Club, but certainly a place that has taken it. We wanted to actually do a section that was bars named after cocktails, right? You have all these different bars. But it really is taken that sort of speakeasy vibe that you get from so many places, but then opened the doors and the windows to the world. So it's got daylight. So it's sort of a great...
America has kind of a different aperitif tradition to Italy and France. So, you know, in Italy and France, it extends for a couple of hours, and it's very food and it's very social. In America, the aperitif is, I have left work and I'm going to have
happy hour.
happy hour, and I'm going to have a drink to switch work off before I go home. Whereas, you know, Italians and French are mostly like, yeah, is work over yet? Because the important stuff is starting soon. Whereas, you know, and so they're kind of kicking off their night. Whereas in America, you go for an aperitif to shut out the day.
Aperitif hour is August.
Yeah. And then this is a brand new bar. It's only just opened. In fact, we sort of discussed whether to even put it on the list. It's called Cafe Dante in New York. It's actually a bar which has been running for 100 years. It's just been closed and reopened under new ownership. And they're really, you can see from their list, it's very aperitivo driven. They have this extraordinary drink called a Garibaldi, which is freshly squeezed. And I mean, like, the second that you order it, orange juice on top of Campari. It's become the drink of summer in New York City. And I think they're going to do an extraordinary job at shaping the idea of the aperitif in America.
And Naren Young's the bartender behind that, and he's a sort of industry legend to both Jacob and I, a good friend, but someone that such a curmudgeon, will never win Best Bartender of the Year, but he could win it if he wasn't a curmudgeon, because he's got the skills.
All right, the next, the bars that made it safe for us to drink again. We forget that in the 60s and 70s, like, cocktail traditions started to fade away. And there are some bars that kept the skills alive so that we would be able to enjoy those, you know, that tradition again today. And the first for me is Schumann's. This is kind of what, you know, rock star bartenders like Dusan Zarek would like to be. This is Charles Schumann. I think he's 75 now. He's still a male model, as well as owning perhaps the most influential bar in all of continental Europe.
The type of guy you wouldn't leave your wife or your girlfriend with. Yeah. Still, you know, a 75-year-old that you wouldn't do that to.
A really amazing bar. It runs till 4 in the morning, and the service never slips. I've come in there at 3 o'clock in the morning, ordered 2 cocktails, some food, and an espresso, and it's turned up, you know, within 5 minutes. It's extraordinary, the speed, how well drilled they are. A huge influence on a bar called Employees Only, which in turn has been a huge influence on so many bars around the world.
This category in itself shouldn't be underestimated, because if you go back to, say, 95, 96, getting a good cocktail anywhere in the world was a very difficult thing to do, and these are the bars that actually made it easier. One of them, obviously, Chris Hanna at the French 75 bar. We decided we would put lots of New Orleans bars in there, so you could go there and it would really piss them off because they're going to get really busy. But it's only 1 week of the year, right? You know, when you go there, say Jacob and Simon send me.
So
and they said you'd give me a free drink.
So this opened back in 1979, and you only have to take a stroll down Bourbon Street to realize, like, what it must have been like in New Orleans in the 1980s and 90s to see that this must have seemed like almost like an occultish bar. Like, you're using fresh citrus. You use champagne in your champagne cocktails. What is a champagne cocktail?
Can I get one of those big ass French 75s, please?
For 35 years, this bar has kept, you know, the old traditions of New Orleans alive, so that the rest of the world can come to New Orleans and spread them around the world.
So in London, the Lab Bar it just changed. It was a game changer. It stands for the London Academy of Bartenders, and that's how they started. For 6 months, it was where you train bartenders. And this is at a time when I didn't even know what a Sazerac was. And they were teaching people how to make it. And after 6 months, they decided it should become a bar. And they went out into the world with a cocktail list of about 250 cocktails. It was sort of influenced a little bit by Dale DeGroff's visits, because they put everything on crushed ice, but everything was made with fresh fruit, and they took it to a new level. It looked more like a fruit bar than it did a cocktail bar because of the pineapples and the mangoes and everything. And they made all these sugars, like vanilla sugars, and these drinks were in sling glasses. They looked absolutely stunning. It was a place where you could go and show off to people, like, if you've ever seen a drink that looks like this. It's a little bit dated now, I won't lie, but that style of drinks traveled the world. It influenced Australia. I think, you know, it was really one of the seminal and most important cocktails of this modern cocktail renaissance.
I'm actually from New Zealand.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
All right, I'm just trying to trick you up as you start to sober up. All right, the next one is the Zigzag Cafe, which opened in 1995 in Seattle. And for many years, actually, you can't say this in New York, but actually the West Coast led the cocktail renaissance in the USA. And it was kind of a collection of obsessive kind of geeks that found a love for old cocktail culture, and then the internet gave them a voice. So once upon a time, they were sort of, putting on Frank Sinatra and making Manhattans in their own rooms, and then suddenly there were cocktail forums online, and this is where it all spread. And Zigzag Cafe was sort of the one, for a massive cocktail population sort of gravitated there. Drinks like The Last Word were repopularized there, and it's a truly fantastic bar even today.
Yeah, Murray Stenson won the very first Spirited Awards in 2007. Murray won Best Cocktail Bar and Murray won Best Bartender. And again, he's one of those bartenders that are like, you know what, I got a shift, I can't make it.
And then finally, the Pegu Club, which sort of took the nascent speakeasy trend, which had been happening all over New York, and then the rebirth, which had been driven a bit more by places like Flatiron Lounge and employees only, and suddenly turned it into like this really refined. This is kind of the moment at which the rebirth of the cocktail was announced in New York City. So when this opened in 2005, it was kind of, they applied the same sort of thinking and theories that they do at a French restaurant. Everything was refined, the service was great, the staff weren't haughty, and the drinks, man, the old Cuban, the Gin Mule, and the Earl Grey Martini, which is going to be coming to you shortly. These are drinks that if they weren't born there, they were created by Audrey Saunders, whose bar this is.
And bartenders like Jim Meehan worked there, and Giuseppe Gonzalez.
There could be two people on their way to pay homage to a deity, or they could be leaving Simon's party. They're like, please, Simon, we've been waiting an hour and a half to get in. All right, the first is Academia Cachaça. If you ever make it to Rio de Janeiro, Academia Cachaça these are the bars that have got either such a deep collection of a category, or they are the recognized experts in a category. And Academia de Cachaça is a really fantastic spot in Rio, which has sort of given the love for this spirit to the rest of the world.
Third biggest spirit in the world because of one cocktail.
The next is the Craigellachie Hotel, where you can go. It's up in the middle of Speyside. If you love Scotch whiskey, you're probably going to go there anyway. It's across the river from Macallan. It's just down the road from the Craigellachie Distillery. It's just up the road from Glenfiddich. So there's a lot of good reasons to go already. The reasons to go to this bar after you visit these distilleries are it's full of what we call ghost distilleries, or quiet distilleries. The distilleries that are no longer with us, and they've got the bottles here. But because it's the Scottish Highlands, everything is so cheap, right? By our standards, it's still incredibly expensive. For people who live in the Highlands are very famously frugal. Like they won't even, the hotel, when I checked into the hotel, they were like, oh, I'm very, very sorry. You're going to have to pay to use the Wi-Fi, or as they call it, the Wi-Fi. And, it's going to take £1 a day. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I drank here like almost every whiskey I'd ever wanted to try in my life over a 6-hour period for a £49 bill. And they apologized to me. All right. The next is the Dolce Gin Club in Valencia, which just actually last week was recognized by the Guinness Book of Records as having the largest selection of gins in the world. Large is not the same as great necessarily, but in this case it is, because there's so many things that are obscure, but it's more the gin and tonic service that they give you once you come in. For every single one of these gins, more than 600 and counting, they have their own unique gin and tonic serve. And so the way the Spanish have repopularized the gin and tonic is kind of given us all a new love for it. Jack Rose. This is American sort of a broader whiskey, right? So rye whiskey, American whiskey, apple whiskey. It's in Washington, D.C. It's a really fantastic spot. And it's got sort of 3 parts. So they put all the amazing popular whiskeys up on the sort of rooftop patio. In the middle of summer, it gets very stifling in D.C. Down on the ground floor, which is the photo you'll see on the left, it's just a wall of American whiskeys. And then if the bartenders like you, they'll invite you to the bar in the basement, which has whiskeys that nobody has ever seen
Don't
before.
go when they invite you.
Pre-prohibition American whiskies that have never been seen before. It's not cheap by any measure. This is where your taxes go. But if you make it to DC, this is a bar that must be on your list.
And the Jack Rose is one of those bars that's not only a great quality bar, but it's also a party bar, so you can have a good time.
Yeah. And sometimes, spirit bars can be so over-serious, like, ooh, look at us being reverential about, rye whiskey or whatever. This is the largest collection of bourbons in America. It's in Chicago, but what's amazing about it, it's in a divey bar in a divey neighborhood out in Lincoln Park. They play punk rock. They're mostly interested in serving you a beer and a shot. But if you look then, and they've got all the flavored vodkas and all the gins and whatever the 86 Co's just released. But you look up on the shelves and you'll see every bourbon you've ever wanted to try in your life at amazing prices with staff that really care about it.
This bar is so loved by whiskey producers. It's almost where whiskey distillers and whiskey producers go to drink. and they make special bottlings for this bar specifically, and it's a dive bar. I mean, everyone really deep down instinctively wants a dive bar, but they want a dive bar that serves good cocktails and good booze, right?
Cool. All right. Top 5 tiki bars, and I mean this is ironic. This is probably one of the hardest. And tiki is a sort of strange thing, right? Because it's a kind of theatre set, and so we didn't want to be obvious here and put in Latitude 29. Although by the end of this week, I think it would probably be going to number 1 on our list. But number 1 has to be the Mai Kai, which is, it's kind of like Noah's Ark of tiki culture. It's this extraordinary, sprawling 600-seater restaurant in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, the best place to find tiki bars that have been left is, America's whitest, most retired towns. Because they didn't know that it ever went out of fashion in the 70s, right? They've just carried on going. And you can get it's hilarious for me as well, because I come from the South Pacific. You get a Polynesian show from these people who have never been to Polynesia. But that's kind of what the Novel Tiki's about. And this is, the places with every bar that has opened since, like Smuggler's Cove, has been inspired by the Mai Kai.
Trailer Happiness was my favorite bar in the world for about 5 years in a row, and if I still lived in London, it might still be my favorite bar. I just don't get to go. It's as famous for its sticky carpets as it is for its cocktails.
Yeah, these aren't very good pictures of Trailer Happiness, but that's not my fault. There are no good pictures of Trailer Happiness.
And it's what makes a good bar. There is one thing that I love about bars is when I call them a den of sin, and this is a den of sin. The sweat drips off the ceiling. The DJ makes you want to dance on the tables. Yet the bartenders are there. I remember the very first experience I had at Trailer Happiness. The guy had 3 cocktail shakers, one in his hand shaking it, and one between his legs here, and he was just doing the twist like this, shaking 3 drinks. And there were flames going off at the other end. The drinks are amazing. The party is amazing, and it is the bar that kind of created modern tiki in some ways, and it was very visionary, and it certainly, England wasn't a country about tiki, and this is the bar that really...
Luckily, it's in a really posh part of London where the residents don't like bars to open late, so it actually closes at midnight. Luckily for that, because I think if it had been allowed to run any later, the government would have closed it.
And I would be dead. If you go back to the slide, just on the right is you could become part of their rum club. If you worked your way, before they opened, they would teach you about rum and teach you about really good rums. Teachers like Angus Winchester, Ian Burrell would go and teach there. And once you'd completed the class, then they would give you a cup. And obviously you can still do that from afar. And then they had a section of rums that you can't get rare, but they would sell it to you for about $10 a shot. Stuff that would normally cost you $100 because you were a member of the rum club, and they would collect special rums because you were one of their loyal customers. I think that's a really nice touch.
The next is a real favourite of mine. Bologna is a place that's basically full. It's a really perfectly preserved Italian medieval city, and it's in Emilia-Romagna, where all of Italy's famous foodstuffs come from. So Parmigiano, prosciutto, all of these sorts of things. And the city is overrun with food bores, right? So going on like a prosciutto tour. I mean, what the fuck? And so, they're always going in and going, what aperitivi do you have? And so you walk in, like literally, it's a real colonnaded city, so everything is beautifully preserved like this. And you go off this amazing 16th century colonnade into this riotous bar where the head bartender looks like Captain Jack Sparrow. And it's just full of a drink is flaming, the roof is stained with burned cinnamon. I'm not even sure how you do that. And so they're simultaneously banging out amazing tiki drinks, and then suddenly somebody comes in and says, what Negronis do you have, and what's your specification? And so, and then they'll simultaneously bang out a Negroni, and then going back to lighting cinnamon on fire. It's an amazing spot. How did I manage to do that?
Tiki for me is obviously the great category because it was invented in America by Don Beach, one of the bars that I wish was still open. Obviously, Trader Vic did it. But it was there to bring life in a dull time, after Prohibition, World War II. It sort of brought that whole vibe of the vacation in the bar. And the weird thing about it is, of course, we think of Hawaii and all of those places, but when air travel happened and the flights started going to Hawaii was like, shit, we got to tiki-fy ourselves. They based bars on us. It was a Californian invention, and Hawaii was like, oh, we got to make ourselves.
Hawaii's in Polynesia, and everyone in Polynesia is going, they think we do what? We mostly open beer and serve raw fish. All right. Another great bar here at Lobo Plantation in Sydney, where it's managed to double up two of the bartenders' kind of favourite periods. So the Tiki, it's taken the classic 1920s, 30s bars of Old Havana, so the Cuban Cancionero period, and added a Tiki flourish with top quality Australian bartenders, which means fast, great drinks served with a great sense of humour. It's a really fantastic spot to lose a night or two.
Okay, San Francisco up for an award this year. They the Smuggler's Cove. Definitely the home of Tiki in San Francisco. I mean, obviously, Tiki has a history with San Francisco, and they've taken it and gone with it. It looks to me like Walt Disney himself went in there and actually decorated it, and it definitely looks like a set from Pirates of the Caribbean. And when you go in thinking that and not worrying about it, then you just realize that they have one of the best selections of rums you've ever seen, and some of the best bartenders in the country right now today.
The average age of their bar team is over 40, and it would embarrass most 25-year-old bartenders, the speed at which they work. It's just an incredible bar. Probably if I had two spots to go in America, they'd be Tommy's and Smuggler's Cove, both in San Francisco, both well worth a visit. All right, bars to drink something older than you are. This is, the places that give you the opportunity to drink really extraordinary drinks that have died. So Cannon in Seattle, one of the most amazing ranges of American and Scotch whiskies. This collection was being built up over 12 years before Jamie even managed to open Cannon. That's a commitment.
The Cannon's one of my favourite bars at the moment. It's built on someone's heart and soul. His dad put up the shelves. He collected the booze. It's not done on big budget. Yeah, you would never know because it's just so beautiful. And of course, he collected so many spirits that even if you go into his office, you've got to walk around bottles. I mean, there are bottles everywhere, and it will continue growing. Just so at some point, Jamie Boudreau, all of his staff hates him because there's nothing but bottles everywhere.
And the bar top is stained with Angostura bitters rather than paint, and I really love that anecdote. All right, the next is Bar Lebensturm, which is, this is Germany or Europe's version of the vintage cocktail place. The bottles are arranged here like a work of art, and there really is almost everything that has ever been made, good and bad, right? So you can go in here and you can find an extraordinary, 1920s Cuban Bacardi rum and also a bottle of Bundaberg, right? And so, they have everything, with full tasting notes, and it's really, every spirit is brought out with great reverence, and so it's an amazing spot.
It's one of my favorite nights out because downstairs is one of the best restaurants in the town, and then you go upstairs and they let you smoke cigars with it too as well. They have the vintage cigars to go with the vintage spirits.
I think and in Berlin, you're actually required by law to smoke in a bar, I think. That certainly feels that way when you leave.
This bar is interesting because it's not on people's radar, and it really should be. It's in Venice, in California, Venice Beach. It's been opened by a guy called Pablo Moir and Steve Lavigny, and the range is absurd. Because of the earthquakes, they actually had to put blue tack and sticky tape on the bottom of all the bottles. I hate to think about what happened when the first earthquake happened, when they didn't realize that. But they've been collecting, they consistently buy, and what they do on social media is they post the history and stories of all of the spirits that they actually select, and they work with different distillers to help them, curate all of the vintages and years.
And they have an amazing collection of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think to collect, like old Amaris, unusual vermouths, and going back many, many years. So there's hundreds of collections of old whiskey now, but very few people that can offer interesting collection of old liqueurs, Amari, vermouth, etc.
Basically, it's wasted on the people that live in their neighborhood.
That's how the rest of the country feels about Los Angeles in general, I think. All right, the Multnomah Whiskey Library from Portland is another place which has arranged all of these extraordinary whiskies in an extraordinary way, and the reverence with which they deal with their spirits is something to behold. They have a drinks trolley which comes out and serves really gorgeous drinks. They specialize in the old-fashioned, and again, just a spot to come in. You sit in there, you really like. One of the most important things, if you came to our talk yesterday, is to walk into a bar and get the notion that somebody has done the caring for you. And when you walk in and sit in Multnomah, you really get the sense, I care, right? The staff and the owner have said, I care about this more than you do. So, so that we're going to make a truly great experience for you, which is very important.
Okay, Salvatore Calabresi, one of the guys that really just held the court for our industry when drinks were bad. He's one of my favorite characters. He looks like Inspector Clouseau. He's from Italy. He prides himself on making the oldest cocktails and the oldest drinks. He brings them around the world. He has the budget to do so. He has this knack for finding billionaire investors that will let him buy cognacs that are hundreds of years old. And he not only does he make the drink with the oldest spirits, he'll be like, let's make a white lady from 1930. He will actually buy glassware from 1930 and a cocktail shaker that was made in 1930 and do the whole thing. I just don't know what he does with the ice, but but he's trying to recreate that experience of how that drink would taste at that time. And they're really expensive, and people who are enthusiasts can't afford them. And of course, it's always like football players that end up drinking them, but annoyingly, but he is at least giving you the opportunity, if you win the lottery, to experience that.
The whole vintage spirits trend really comes from Salvatore. Yeah. So at the Lanesborough Hotel, which is 3 bars ago for Salvatore, Mick Jagger used to come in and was a real passionate enthusiast for drinking these obscure vintage cocktails. Salvatore created this idea of liquid history, putting together these old drinks with all of the old spirits so that you get a sense of what it used to taste like. And if you want to know how this guy is winning at life, I mean, basically he has a bar in Las Vegas and a bar in London. He makes 4,000-pound cocktails for Mick Jagger, and they get to, and every day he goes to work to be greeted by Playboy bunnies.
Yeah. And he wrote one of the most important cocktail books of modern time as well, and you really should buy his book if you haven't got it already.
Cool. All right. So the bars you never want to leave. These are bars that either give you such an extraordinary, a bit like the Hotel California, except you want to go. And these are sort of the bars that have an amazing either ambiance or service style, or there's just something about them that means that you could lose an entire day there and never notice. The first is one of my favorites, which is Ruby, which is in Copenhagen, which kicked off this amazing Scandinavian cocktail renaissance. I always describe it as if you had a really rich, stylish Scandinavian uncle who left town and gave you the keys to his apartment. It's a really, really elegant place. They make beautiful drinks for very beautiful people in a beautiful bar that runs very, very late, and you never want to leave and often don't.
I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Gabe and Elad brought cocktail culture many other great bartenders had to Miami, but it's stuck, and it's one of the most amazing places. It's this tiny little cubby in a backpacker's lodge, and it serves the best cocktails you could imagine. Fresh fruit and all of those things. These guys are so, it has an image of its own. They wear the shirts, they look fantastic, but of course it's got a courtyard with that Miami heat. It's just like that beautiful Miami heat, and you can sit in there all day and all afternoon and almost forget that beautiful bar's there and sit in that courtyard and drink and drink and drink.
All right, the next is Le Lion, Bar de Paris, and this is a town with no heat, right? So this is Hamburg and Berlin, so it doesn't have the same kind of culture, so everything is internal, and it's a very interior city. And so Jörg Meyer, who's sort of the leading light of the modern German cocktail renaissance, created this bar that's so incredibly comfortable. His idea was this is going to become the living room for the city, and he certainly managed that. Great staff, great service, and everything is just so. There's not a thing out of place in this room, and it's well worth...
Attention to detail, to me, is the one thing that takes a good bar to being a great bar. When you go for a smoke at Le Lion, not that I smoke, but my friends do, they put a little silk garb on you and walk out into the courtyard, and now you're warm in a cold Germany.
The next is Trick Dog, which is sort of like how we imagine dive bars would be. So dive bars, we've got a gentleman here from San Francisco, I think. We keep getting a thumbs up every time we do a West Coast bar. We appreciate your enthusiasm, sir. All right.
30 years, brother, 30 years. San Francisco.
All right, well, don't forget to remember how lucky you are, as Julio Bermejo says. When we have this idea of what a dive bar is like and a kind of working bar and a mid-afternoon bar, we have this stylized fantasy idea of what they're actually like, and then you go to a dive bar and you're like, dear God, do these people have jobs and this is the spirits they have? And so Trick Dog has managed to create this really amazing, it's got the feel of kind of a dive bar, but done by really talented designers. It's busy from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because in San Francisco, sort of nobody needs to work anymore, right? They just join a startup for a year, and then and you just amazing bar food. They've taken the classic American dive bar and given it 5-star treatment. It's become so influential.
Trick Dog is as famous for its bar as it is its cocktail menus, and every year or every menu they change it. They've done things like a an album of all your 7-inch singles. And the latest one is a Chinese takeaway, and they really stand up for like, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. They really try and make the whole experience fun and attainable for people.
Cool. The next bar is sort of the leading light for Latin America right now, Licoreria Limentor in Mexico City. You go there and the service is fantastic. The energy that you get from, we think we go into rowdy bars in New York City or London. There's nothing compared to Mexico City, and it's rowdy till very late. And you're sort of looking around going, I'm a booze professional and these people are making me feel tired. Just nobody would leave. If they didn't close it, I don't think anybody would leave. Really amazing staff, really fantastic drinks, and just such a beautiful setting. And it's doing so much for cocktail culture in Latin America as well. All right, this is probably our most fun one. These are the bars you don't remember leaving.
They're like time warps, it's the time machine, you go in and you're like, it was Monday, and you walk out and it was Wednesday.
Yeah. Wednesday of the following week. Yeah. First is Kalu Kalay, which is in Shoreditch, which really sort of took the divey, grimy ethos of East London and gave it cocktail culture. Really amazing staff. They've managed through almost a decade now to maintain a very high standard, and everything's done in a very quirky way. And you just sort of don't even notice that you're there.
It's Alice in Wonderland in a bar. There's doors that are short, there's doors that are tall, you walk through a cupboard, and it's just a sort of world, and that's why you get lost in it.
One of my favorites now, this is sort of the employees only of Eastern Europe, which is Norbar. And dear God, yeah, Moscow is a sort of city where they don't let you leave anyway. In fact, well, actually, as I can tell you from airport security, sometimes they don't let you leave. It's the only country in the world where instead of, normally in an airport, they don't want to let you in if your paperwork's not right. In Russia, they don't want to let you out. And it's a 23-and-a-half-hour city. So basically, they close bars for sort of, to give it a cursory clean, and then they reopen because the rent is so expensive. So why not be open all the time? Norbar is just, takes all of that kind of crazy chaos of Moscow and gives it such elegance in the same sort of, it's the employees only.
I love those two pictures, because the first one says, we're a classic nice cocktail bar. The second one says, you're fucked. When the time I went there, I get a message afterwards. We make you cry like little girl.
The next is 28 Hong Kong Street, which is doing, again, similar amazing things, cocktail culture in Southeast Asia. Just such an extraordinary bar team that it never lags. And they take such great attention to detail, almost restaurant quality when you're there. And you sort of don't even notice that the clock is ticking. The drinks keep coming, the staff, the service never slips, whatever hour of the day. There's almost a bit like a casino. Nothing ever prompts you to leave, so of course you don't. Cool. Oh shit! I keep doing.
Okay, the black. So you'll see a theme. It says "Great Bar Troublemakers," and that's pretty much what makes the bars that you never want to leave. I remember the last time I was at the Black Pearl. I said it's midnight, and we'd been there for about 3 hours. I said, what should we do next? And 4 hours later, I was like, what should we do next? And that's really what it's about. And it's because of those arseholes there, the troublemakers. But they make great cocktails, but they also want you to have a good time, and that's what they're concentrating on. The cocktails are a sort of minor part of it.
Oh. Actually, this is the bar we don't want to talk about because it's just sort of like a badge of dishonor in the industry to know employees only too well. When I moved to New York City, having traveled to New York many, many times in previous years, actually sort of for a lark, I actually went to employees only at 6 p.m. when it opens and left at 6:30 just so I would have that memory, right?
That's their remit. Let's get through this category, cool. I think.
All right, okay. All right, bars that see the future. These are the places, people that are pushing the boundaries, telling us what cocktails we're going to be drinking in the future. And the first for me is White Lion. This is a bar where their commitment to sustainability is so great. They use no citrus, they use no ice. And so a lot of people who haven't been think that sounds, very controversial. You have to go there in order to see the standards, see the service, see how extraordinary their drinks are, and how well they're bringing that ethos to life.
It's in one of the rougher parts of London, and yeah, it's one of the finest. Jay-Z and Beyonce went there, so it must be good. And everything comes bottled, or they measure things meticulously on scales, and it's a very unique way of serving, and I've never seen anything quite like it. And of course, their aim is to only have one garbage bag a week of waste.
So this is in here not only for the creativity of the team, but also, if the industry is going to survive for 50 years, we need to become more sustainable, and White Lion shows us the way.
The Aviary in Chicago is one of my favorite bars in the world. I speak to it a lot because I love classic cocktails. I love getting the perfect Manhattan. But when you put one of the best chefs in the world to try and create drinks, you end up with something completely different. They don't actually have a bar that you can rock up to and order a drink. It's in behind the cage behind them, and they're there doing it like you would see a restaurant serving food. They have a line of people. One puts on the garnish, one does the shaking, and all of those different things. And it's done in such a different way. And their approach has led to drinks that you could never really fathom, and I love it because it's pushing the industry forward. His name's Grant Achatz. He's won several James Beard Awards. His restaurant has been number 5 in the world, 3 Michelin stars, and now he's putting his talents to making cocktails. Now, it was funny because martini shouldn't just come in gel form, so he teamed up with Charles Joly, who's obviously won masses and masses of awards, and so that sort of partnership between the two created, I think, one of the greatest bars in the world.
The next is Booker and Dax doing a similar sort of thing, using scientific techniques to create very interesting and exciting drinks in a very unusual format. The techniques are on display, whereas it's less boundary pushing perhaps in the Aviary in terms of presentation, but the techniques are definitely doing it.
Yeah, I said that Dave Arnold should have called his book How to Blow Drinks Up.
The next is Nottingham Forest, which is a very strange bar in a very beautiful old townhouse in Milan. And then you walk in, so it's named after a not particularly good British football team. And then you walk in, and it's like somebody basically got an inheritance and turned their den into a tiki bar. And then you turn up and you get drinks like you see on the left, which are all inspired by crime shows. There's a drink called Dexter, which you have to basically comes in a blood sample bag, and you have to put on white gloves. Just really, really creative, entertaining drinks. There's a blue drink which comes in a bath. So really, really creative, boundary-pushing drinks. And then the final one in this category, Duck and Waffle, which sort of takes the techniques pioneered by people like Heston Blumenthal, Ferran Adria, and brings those to drinks and really pushes the boundaries forward. What Rich Woods is doing at Duck and Waffle is some of the most creative, thoughtful drinks in the world.
And it's a 24-hour bar.
And it's 40-something stories up. So.
And it's a 24-hour bar.
The next is the bars that set the standard. So for me and for Simon, these are really the places that right now, if you had 5 bars to go to in the world, we'd say that these ones.
Alex and Simone have this philosophy that I love. I love it when you just start from a philosophy. And their philosophy is create a holy shit moment. And that's what they're trying to do for their guests. That's why they think outside the box. That's why they do absurd things. They have the budget to do it. They charge the money to do it.
That's a different kind of holy shit moment when they give you the check. But the thing is that the experience that they've given you is unlike anything else. So even when you do get the check, it's sort of a momentary heart attack, but it's still great value because there's no other bar in the world that can give you the extraordinary experience that they do. My advice to everybody that goes there is when you go into this bar, they actually give you a glass of champagne while you peruse the menu. And it's champagne. Last time it was Laurent Perrier. Just drink the champagne. Sorry, nothing looks good here. This isn't really to my taste.
Our secret.
And then sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is a bar called the Dead Rabbit, which shows 2 things. I think it shows first the massive resurgence of Irish whiskey, but also the attention to detail which has gone into this bar. They have put copper piping into the bar that you will never see, right? It's been built into the bar, but that's because this is how things were done in the 1850s. So just such attention to detail. We go through this era of over-designed bars, under-designed bars. There are a few bars in the world that are more thoughtful than this one.
Yeah, the research. But Jack and Sean, they won Best Bar in the World with their bar in Belfast twice. They made it a destination bar, and then they moved to American openness. And it came from a learning. And it's an interesting one because people came all the way to Belfast to try their amazing cocktails. And then after 2 or 3 cocktails, they went to the bar on the corner and drank Guinness. So they decided that they were going to make the amazing cocktail parlor, which they have. And then when you go downstairs, there's a place that serves Guinness.
A really fantastic spot, deserving of all the fame it gets right now, as is this next bar, which has the great misfortune to be about 20 metres away and under the same roof from the most famous bar on earth. So the Beaufort bar would be regularly on the top of everybody's list of the most famous bar, except it's right next door to the American bar at the Savoy. which basically probably there's no better destination in the world for drinking than the Savoy. These guys really push the boundary. The drinks are very theatrical. They're very elegant. They're not sort of as constrained by history as the American bar. This is their menu on the left, which is a pop-up drink book. One of the most beautiful things you'll ever see.
Which they sent to outer space. You look at me confused, but they actually fucking sent it to outer space.
That's because everyone on Earth had already received a copy of the Dead Rabbit menu.
E.T. is now ordering Manhattans.
And the next is Attaboy, which when this bar was milk and honey for a 14-year period, it really kind of recreated modern cocktail culture, at least on the East Coast. Now as Attaboy, they've taken all of those principles and kind of given it a bit more of a rock and roll ethos.
I personally think the milk and honey is the most important cocktail bar that's opened since I've been in this industry, and it opened in 2000. And it was a very, did you know the password? Did you have the phone number? Oh fuck, they changed the phone number again. And of course it was difficult to get into. And Sammy and Mickey, who took over and turned it into Attaboy, said, you know what? None of that anymore. People can stand. There's no changing of the phone numbers. And of course, it's the same bar, it's the same quality drinks, it's just livelier, and I think they've done an amazing job.
When you're being served a penicillin in this bar by Sam Ross, sort of late at night with some Rolling Stones on the stereo, and this is your last drink of the night in New York City, and you walk out the door, with your belly full of penicillin, and you see the Chrysler Building, and it's just such an evocative New York moment and such a great cocktail moment in the industry.
If I move back to New York, I'm going to move within stumbling distance.
And then another great icon from New York City, which is PDT, which sort of took the speakeasy ethos and sort of made it a little more fun, because it had gotten very serious at this point. So they put it inside a hot dog stand, gave it a real kind of rock and roll sort of ethos, but the drinks were really perfectly put together, but there was a sense of humor and a balance between lowbrow and highbrow, which PDT did so well. Cool, and then 5 bars that you'll hear more of. This is Simon and I picking a couple of bars that we think are, the bars that we will be talking about in 50 years' time. The first is one of my favorites. I've had the misfortune to be in a bar that's already so full of such great bars. Dear Irving in New York City, which just opened just over a year ago. Such a beautiful put together room with such, beautiful, like really elegant drinks with a really great bar team. Sort of a bit cliche to describe the drinks as sort of feminine, but, New York had gone deep into this sort of rabbit hole where every drink had to be overproof rye and Antica formula and Fernet Branca mists. And this brought drinks back to, hey, we can make really elegant, bright, drinkable drinks in a really beautiful way and with extraordinary service.
And Megan, who kind of put the program together, is probably one of the most humble. And of course, humble in this industry means you don't get as noticed. And I think that she's put together one of the best programs in New York City. But because she doesn't shout about it, she really never gets as noticed as she should. And if you listen to the latest Steve Snyder podcast, you'll hear the guys talk about it, thinking that she should win awards, but probably never will, because she's just going to do her thing, and she's going to do it as good, if not better, than anyone else.
Cool, and the next is a bar which is really, really new, which is the Walker Inn, and it's inside an equally great bar in Los Angeles called the Normandy Club. And the Walker Inn has kind of taken everything that's great about Japanese bartending, the real obsessive attention to detail, the special kind of refrigerated drawers for special kinds of ice, the misters. It's like, the attention to detail in here, they have their own lines to carbonate drinks and to carbonate soda, separate refrigerated drawers for each of the garnishes. It's just such an extraordinary attention to detail. And I think, people will be going there and stealing ideas from this place for the next decade.
I think that, again, another bar that should probably be winning awards, but because of its location isn't. The guys behind it are David Kaplan, who opened Death & Company, and Alex Day, who is obviously an alumni of the bartending world and probably one of the great geniuses at the moment, but he spends his time like a scientist in the back rooms, and he put together a system that like I've never seen before, and I really love it. This is one of my new favorites.
Cool. The next is Central Station, which is in Beirut, which is a bar which is really sort of flying the flag for this amazing resurgence across the Middle East at the moment. Very, very classically done, very, very inspired by the great bars of New York City and London, and just doing some very interesting things in very interesting ways with a great bar team that don't really get the exposure. The Middle East, for many, many reasons, isn't quite on the map for a lot of people in terms of, the ambassador circuit who come in and train, or the availability of products. and they're doing amazing things with a very constrained palette of ingredients and a very limited ability to, exposure to the cocktail world, and it's one you'll hear a lot more about. The next is Bulletin Place. So we've gone through this era of very, very serious drinks.
Sydney,
Yeah, and we're back to Sydney, Australia, with the coming resurgence of fruity drinks again. But these aren't fruity drinks as in just throwing in some juice. These guys go to the market each day, they pick up the fresh fruit that's available, and they use that to create the cocktail menu each day. So fresh pureed ingredients, really amazing. Obviously it helps to be in Sydney where fresh fruit, is readily available. And of a high quality, but if when fruity drinks come back, we will look back at Bulletin Place and say, this is why.
I love it when bartenders open bars. It was often a bartender would go in and work for somebody who had money and give it their passion. This is one of those bars where it's a bartender opening a bar.
Cool. And then finally, I guess when this is kind of a bar which is almost like it's a great bar in its own right. But this is a neighborhood bar opened by very, very serious cocktail bartenders. And I guess the dream, if you have been in the industry as long as Simon and I have, is not that there'll be millions of artisans and Beaufort bars opened around the world, although we hope that as well, or not even that there'll be millions of walker-ins, right? Very specific bars with a very clear vision. But that on every neighborhood block in the United States and around the world, there'll be a bar just like this one, where you can get a beer or a shitty bar snack, but you can also get, amazing spirits served in amazing cocktails by bartenders that really care passionately about what they do.
That's the point there. This is a neighborhood bar that is pushing boundaries, and that is really what it's about. Last night they won Bar Fight Club, so that was amazing.
I was just about to remind you of that because I wasn't sure if you could remember.
I just remembered. It came back. They've been nominated for Best Bar Team, which is unbelievable. They've got people like John Gertston, on their team that came from Boston. It's like a dream team going in there. And they're making these incredible drinks. They've been nominated for Best New Cocktail Bar. And it's a neighborhood bar. You don't have to get on a plane. You want that down the road from your favorite Italian restaurant that you can walk down.
It's the same ethos, right? That you want a little neighborhood bistro. So not every place has to be like the French Laundry. We want those as well. But if you want culture to be elevated, you want one of these on your block in every city around the world. It's it shows us the way forward, if you like, for what bars will look like. We hope over the next 30 or 40 years. What neighborhood? It's in the Mission. In the Mission?
In San Francisco.
San Francisco, in the Mission, very easy to find. Just look for Camber English, follow his blog. He live blogs when he's actually sitting at ABV. All right. I think we've got about 3 minutes for some questions.
Yeah, I just want to say, we had 400 bars originally, and we fought to put them down. And honestly, we probably will write a list of the 400 bars and just come into a seminar one year and go, ABV, artisan, like that. But we wanted to actually tell you why we love these bars. And there's this one small thing, we call it attention to detail. We were talking about Tommy's. It's the white chalkboard that's there. We're talking about the Duke's Hotel. It's the trolley. We're talking about Harry's. It's the Bellini. There are reasons why you want to go to places. The reason why they're on the bucket list. And we hope that those bars are places that you'll visit. And like I say, Jacob's got a credit card behind all of them. while you're a Bacardi.
Nervous laugh. All right. I haven't filed my expenses from Tails yet. All right, do we have any questions? Yes, gentleman from San Francisco, full of excitement.
For 30 years I have been. How hard was it to whittle down the list that you had?
Very hard. So we probably we could have put 10 to 15 bars in every single one of those top fives. Until sort of even a couple of days ago, we still had 7 or 8 in most of those. And it's really so I think the principle for us was not that by no means are these the 80 best bars on the planet. Right? There are lots of really amazing bars, but perhaps there are lots of them all of a similar type, and they all come from a similar source. So we sort of wanted to go back to the original. So there's millions of bars like PDT and like Attaboy. So in that case, we cut out most of those that are inspired by them and just went back to the source. So we tried to think, if you were trying to complete your education as a bartender or a cocktail lover, what are the bars that you must visit rather than you're going to visit? Does that make sense? Barney.
What was the number one bar that's not on the list, the hardest bar that you could fly?
Probably for me, I would say, given the amount of travel that you would need to be doing in order to see this bucket list, the bar that should be on there is called One Flew South in the airport in Atlanta. It's the world's best airport bar, possibly the world's only good airport bar. And it's, you know, if it was... Oh, you're going to make an argument for San Francisco again? Sure, you also need an Amex black card, and I don't know what you think my expense account looks like, but...
I'm there 5 days a week.
Do you work for Amex?
Check it out.
All right, well, Jim Meehan actually designed the cocktails there, but he's really hard to track down whenever you want him to put you on a guest list. I mean, there's a lot of great bars that should be on here. Death and Company from New York, Drink in Boston, Cure in New Orleans. I mean, lots and lots of, you know, great bars. But, you know, we just had to try and whittle it down and you know, make a list that we were happy with.
And we, as you saw, we put it into categories, you know, so that we could cover a wide spectrum as well.
Yep. If they gave us another 90 minutes, we'd have 160 bars around the world. So, Jim.
I think you both did a great job. Great job.
Oh, well, thank you very, very much. Thank you. We love, as hopefully the fact that we love bars came through. A couple of things very, very quickly. There's an app for Tales of the Cocktail, so please take a moment to download it. And we're not in the industry. We call this humble bragging, and we're not very good at it. But please do take some time to rate us so that they invite Simon and I back. And a huge thank you, first of all, to our sponsors, to Bacardi and to Ford's Gin. And perhaps more importantly to the Caps, led by Jonathan, who do such an amazing job of producing the cocktails for you. Really, really fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you to our room leads as well who helped put this on. And finally, thank you to all of you for getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning to come along and spend 90 minutes with us. And perhaps thank you to you, Simon, for getting up at 9:58 in the morning to come along. Thank you so much. Great pleasure. Thank you.